Chapter 11. Fallout. Sana laughed giddily as the adrenaline crash hit. That was the craziest thing she'd done in her entire life. Yes, it had hurt, and yes, she'd gotten her butt handed to her. But the sheer exhilaration of putting her life on the line balanced the scales enough for her to feel good regardless. Even the threat of going too far and having her heart give out from under her added to the thrill. She slipped in the back door, peeled off everything except her shirt and pants, and grabbed a glass of water. Getting clean took second priority compared to rehydration. She downed the first glass so fast neither the temperature nor the taste registered. It at least provided enough relief that the second glass felt blessedly cold. The brain freeze that hit as she finished was not worth it. The time needed for the recovery from that was enough of a pause for her to carry the third glass and a few bottles to the couch and sit down while she drank. Her phone rang, startling her badly enough to choke. Water slopped down her front, and painful coughs racked her frame as she set down the glass and hit the response button. "Hello?" Sana, Lynn, Richie. "Oh no. Explain to me exactly why your mother called me asking if I knew my daughter was fighting a supervillain." "Sorry, now you're breaking up. Love you, bye!" She punched the end call button and screamed into a pillow. She was screwed. The phone rang again. Sana whacked at the screen until the tone that indicated an accepted call rang through the room. Sana, are you all right?" That was her mom. Her mom! "I've been calling you for ages. What happened? Are you okay?" Anything else she wanted to say got stuck in her throat. "You didn't get caught up in the attack, did you?" "No, but unless I'm mistaken, you did." "Can we talk later? At home?" "Fine. Don't think you're off the hook." Her phone beeped, and the sound of an incoming call from her father made her blanch. "Oh, trust me. I know." She flipped her phone to silent and retreated to the bathroom to change and clean her cuts. The two biggest were the ones on her shoulder and calf, but she had plenty of small ones on her palms. Those had stopped bleeding, so she washed her hands and left them alone. She peeled off her hoodie and grimaced. Purpling bruises splattered her stomach. The biggest one was centered a half-inch above her belly button, from when Prince Snow had punched her in the gut. She brushed her fingers over it and hissed at the throbbing. Her outer forearm had a similar mark, and smaller ones littered her back, upper arm, and shoulders. Her legs weren't any better, as proven when she shed her sweatpants. Finding a comfortable position to sleep in was going to be awful for the next few days. She resigned herself to pre-bed ibuprofen, despite her distaste for painkillers. As for her cuts, the one on her shoulder was 1.5 inches long and decently deep, but it was mostly muscle tissue that had gotten damaged. It'd be an ugly scar, but it had mostly stopped bleeding. Dried blood and dirt still smeared the flesh around it. Unless she cleaned it soon, it was going to get infected. The gash on her calf was messier. It was still weeping, and blood had dripped down to her sock. Each time she shifted, it sent a little bite of tugging pain up her leg, and putting too much weight on that foot turned that tug into a wet burn that threatened to make her crumple. Stitches. That one needed stitches, and she'd have to wait for that until her mom got home. Pressure bandages would have to suffice in the meantime. How had she managed all that running with her leg in that condition? Adrenaline really was a miracle drug. Dressing the shoulder wound was a clumsy affair. It was on her dominant arm, and her hands had started to shake. She managed to lock her fingers around a wet washcloth and wipe the cut, then spray it with an antiseptic. Despite fumbling the bottle afterwards because of the sting, the cut was clean. She got a gauze pad open, but getting it to stick was another thing entirely. She had to tear at a roll of athletic tape with her teeth and free hand after the third time she dropped the thing in the sink. Once she got the strip she needed, she had to place the gauze over the cut and hold it there by pressing her shoulder to the wall. The pain from that brought tears to her eyes, so she threw on a tape strip as fast as she could and swayed away from the wall to place the rest of it. It was sloppy work, and the gauze didn't lay flat. Attempts to correct it would result in wasted supplies and possible injury, so she let it be. The cut on her calf was more painful to deal with. She had to bend over to reach it, but moving was an ordeal, and her head was starting to swim. Bracing herself against the sink helped. Once she sat down, the antiseptic went on much more smoothly than the first time. The gauze and pressure bandage did too, probably because she had the use of both hands. Sadly, the washcloth was a lost cause after cleaning up all the blood. While she was seated, she got rid of her socks and checked both of her ankles. A little swelling, but she could circle both of them and point her toes with minimal discomfort, so a few days of low stress, elevation, and a pair of compression socks would probably be enough treatment. Getting up was twice as hard as getting down. At least when going down, she had gravity on her side. Getting up took effort. She let out a prolonged groan and hauled herself to her feet despite the aches. Every inch of her body hurt. She felt like she'd been hit all over with a meat tenderizer. Repeatedly. How did people do this for a living? She'd theorized that all supers were nuts since her first research binge, and this was only proving her right. There wasn't a lot she could do for her bruises besides ice them, so she tugged on the dress she'd brought with her, splashed some warm water on her face, and turned the bots into a cloak. She'd have made a blanket, but the cloak kept her hands free. She made a solid, if limping, attempt to get to the freezer, but everything was losing color and going fuzzy around the edges. The living room carpet looked mighty comfy all of a sudden. Chances were the collapse added at least one new bruise to her tally, but that was so low on the priority list it didn't count. Her eyes fell shut and she took deep breaths. If she had been less exhausted, her thoughts would have been racing too fast to sleep and her body would have hurt too much. But right now, she was too tired for that. The front door slammed open. Sana startled so badly at the noise she made it to her hands and knees, yelped at the pain, and crumpled back onto her side. Ow! Sana! Her mom raced over to her and helped her sit up. Her dad was right behind her. She touched a bruise, and Sana hissed and recoiled. She pulled away as though burned. That was a kick in the teeth. Sana reached for her, though her arm was too heavy for coordination. Okay, promise. No, you're not, Sana's dad said from behind her. He hooked her under the armpits and hoisted her to her feet. She clenched her teeth to suppress a groan. He caught it anyway. Honey, I'm getting it. Put her on a chair. Now that the initial scare was over, all Sana wanted to do was sleep. Her parents could deal with it if she took a nap, right? Do not fall asleep. Do you hear me? Do not fall asleep, Sana Lynn. Ugh, now he was middle-naming her? Rude. She shook her head to get rid of the noise and slumped into the arms supporting her. They stopped moving, but at least her weight was off her leg. Sana! What? She dropped her head back to glare weakly up at the blur supporting her. I wanna sleep. Was gonna sleep before you came home. You can't until your mother checks you for a concussion. Ugh, you didn't hit my head. Got my stomach. Your mother does not care, and neither do I. You're getting everything checked. He eased her into a kitchen chair, and the hard texture was uncomfortable enough to wake her up a little. When her dad circled around to stare down at her and took her pulse, she looked at her lap and flexed her hands. The emotional discomfort was worse than the physical. They stayed in that tableau until her mom came back, first aid kit in hand. She pushed past her husband and brandished a penlight. Look at me. She checked Sana's pupils, ears, mouth, and nose, then gave her a rapid head-to-toe exam. Sana stayed pliable and doll-like through the procedure, obeying orders but not much else. Her dad squeezed her wrist periodically, and she flexed her hand in response. Otherwise, the lights were on with nobody home. Even the tingling numbness of topical anesthetic and the tug of sutures passing through her calf and shoulder didn't elicit more than a twitch. Once she was done, her mom patted Sana's knee. Done. She wiggled her wrist. Can I go to sleep now? Absolutely not, she snapped. What were you thinking? Sana leaned back and whined wordlessly at the tone. She didn't understand. She just wanted a rest. Calm down. Her dad let go of her wrist and stepped closer, and she plunked her head against his stomach. I'm as livid as you are, but we'll have to wait to interrogate her after she comes around. He rested a hand in her hair, and she wiggled around to rub her face against him affectionately when he petted her head. We need answers. Do you honestly think she's going to be answering anything in this state? Look at her. Her mom snarled. I had to give her stitches 30 seconds ago. I saw plenty. Act like a doctor for 1 minute, not a mother. Would you tell anyone this exhausted to do anything except sleep? He scratched her scalp, and she all but purred at the sensation. I doubt she could recognize a coherent sentence, let alone form one. Her attempt to defend herself came out sounding like she was speaking around a mouthful of marbles. Her dad chuckled. See? She headbutted him gently, and he picked her up and carried her to the couch. You checked her over and stitched her up, he said over his shoulder. Is she in immediate danger? No, but will you monitor in case something changes? Obviously, but what would you do if someone with these injuries came to the ER? Stitch them, give them painkillers and fluids, and let them rest. You've already stitched her, and it seems she's taking care of the fluids herself. He laid her on the couch, and she burrowed under the pile of pillows that lived there while he gestured to the bottles on the coffee table. A few pillows fell off, but her dad replaced them and draped a quilt over her for good measure. She resembled nothing more than a lump of fabric by the time he was done. We can have that talk when she wakes up. Talks. Gross. She made a face and scrunched her eyes shut. Now that she was nice and cozy, fighting off sleep was a losing battle. The last thing she heard before going under was her mother's, "She's not a patient, she's my daughter." 3 hours later, she woke up. Grogginess threatened to drag her under again. Every inch of her body was stiff and sore, and Bread was on her chest, snoring. She groaned and stretched, which didn't do much except dislodge the cat, and sat up. Someone placed a glass of apple juice in her hands, and she drank without thinking about it. The sweet shock to her taste buds dispelled the last of the sleep fog. Her dad had been the one to hand over the glass. He was perched in a chair pulled up next to the couch, arms crossed. The look on his face boded poorly for Sana's immediate future. She averted her gaze and tried to find something else to focus on. Oh, how cute! Garlic was curled up on the back of the couch. Sana. Crap. She lowered the glass and turned back. Yes? Are you feeling better? The tone was not soft, though the question was kind. This did not ease Sana's nerves. Mm-hmm. She finished the rest of her drink and, out of a lack of jewelry to fiddle with, tugged on a lock of her hair. What happened? Where's Mom? She's in the bathroom. As for what happened, I was hoping you would tell me. Hysterical laughter and alarm bells reverberated around the inside of Sana's mind. She was screwed. Utterly and completely screwed. There was no way out of this. Her dad was so furious he'd cycled back around to rationality. She put the empty glass on the coffee table. I wasn't going to go. What changed? Mom was in trouble. This was something to latch onto, the core of her decision and argument. I couldn't let her get killed. Oh, you did not just use me as an excuse for your own recklessness. Speak of the devil in all her scary, scary glory. She descended on Sana like a thunderbolt, and Sana could do nothing except cower in the face of the tirade. Did you even stop to think about the consequences of your actions? You obviously didn't, because you wouldn't have gotten into a fight with a murderous superweapon otherwise. I can't believe how stupid you were. She threw her arms up as though done with everything to do with her daughter. Mom, and the video. What was that? What exactly were you hoping to accomplish there? Did getting called out destroy any common sense you had? I would like an explanation for that as well, her dad commented, considering how I explicitly told you not to engage in vigilantism for another few years. You knew about this? Her mom rounded on him. Sana couldn't bring herself to feel relieved she was no longer the direct focus of the wrath of Diane, given how worked up she was getting. You knew she was thinking about this, and you didn't tell me? I believed I had dissuaded her. Obviously, I was wrong. He didn't so much as blink. Sana suspected it was an ex-Marine thing. Once this boiled over, he had to teach her how to do that. It was a mistake. You don't say. The acid in those words could have corroded steel girders in seconds. Sana has 15 stitches in her leg and 8 in her arm, and you're calling it a mistake. Would you prefer I call it a miscalculation? The first traces of irritation crept into his face and tone. It's over and done, and I failed to prevent it. Fine, you can be mad at me for forgetting to tell you. I'm mad at myself for forgetting about it, but this isn't the most pressing issue right now. I don't know, this seems pretty important to me. Sana, right. Her. Oh, thanks a lot, Daw. If she died because of her mom and not because of Prince Snow, she'd never live it down. She shrank into the sofa and made an effort to look contrite. Her mom did not appreciate the attempt. You're grounded for the rest of your life, and you're getting rid of those things attached to you. What? She couldn't believe her ears. You heard me. If you can't use them responsibly, you won't be allowed to keep them. Have you considered the fact that when I tried, I nearly popped an artery? I also offered another plan, but you vetoed it. The other plan involved you going into VFib or VTAC, and I am not giving you a heart condition at age 15. I already have a heart condition. I've had it for 3 months, and I was 14 for one of those. What would have happened if you triggered it during the fight? Did you think of that? She clutched at her heart with one hand. I know my own limits. They were impossible to miss or mistake, and they came with plenty of warning before she crossed the line. I'd have bowed out before then, until he chased you down. Okay, so the plan had holes. She'd have figured something out. I knew what I was doing. No, you didn't. Her mom sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. I can go through my old med school contacts and find someone who can get those things off you safely. The sooner they're gone, the better. A horrible feeling of fear and betrayal ripped through Sana. It was like her mom had suggested amputating her hands. She grabbed her cloak and wrapped it tightly around herself. No, she cried. You can't. It's a weapon. If one person can make it, someone else can too. Power and weapon research is a well-established industry. I'm sure somebody would be willing to take your case. That's not it. Then explain. How? Her parents would never accept, I'm scared by how I'd sooner kill myself than separate from this part of me, even if it was the truth. They couldn't understand how the bots were safe and comforting. She needed a more practical reason. It's not like an appendectomy. The connection's not physical. There's nothing to cut. Plus, it's my brain that controls them and my heart on the line, but the link's not one-sided. I can feel things the bots do, textures and stuff, and pushing the limits causes physical symptoms. There's feedback coming to me, and you're not going to be able to remove that without some serious backlash. You'd adjust. The same neuroplasticity that let you get used to this will work in the other direction. You could be normal again, Sana. She couldn't. You didn't go back to normal after watching a murder. She still had nightmares, however few and far between they were. Even if you found someone and got me to agree to the procedure, there's Lord Static's killer to contend with. He's still out there, and if he learns you're on the hunt for someone to break a psychic link, it'll be you torn to pieces and me right after. If the bots were the goal. Why wouldn't they be? They were Lord Static's greatest miracle. Her mom cursed without vehemence. I forgot about that, she admitted. Sana hadn't. She didn't think about it much anymore, but the awareness of danger was there whenever she let the bots go loose. It belatedly occurred to her that she'd tossed the original plan to hide in plain sight and wait until the killer left out the window, but there was no changing that now. So you can't. I'm careful. I haven't used the bots publicly before. This was extenuating circumstances. Her mom sighed. It can wait, but they are going to go soon, one way or another. Sana could deal with waiting. Waiting meant more time to plot, to unlock more of the code, to tie herself to the bots more tightly. Time for her mother to forget, for Sana to mount a defense. Waiting was, for now, acceptable. So was telling a half-truth. They scare me, too. Just not for the reasons her mom would think. She eased her conscience with a whole truth. I didn't want to be a vigilante. That made her mom soften. At least you wouldn't do it again, she said. I would if I had to. The response was instinctive, and it didn't surprise her as much as it should have. When the chips were down, she would do that and more to keep her loved ones safe. I'm not sorry for what I did. It was the wrong thing to say. Her mom exploded in incandescent rage. So much for talking her down. You better be sorry! Her own anger fired up in a chain reaction of temper. I wouldn't have done it if not to protect you. That's not your job. It's my job as a parent to keep you safe. I could handle it. I did. No, you didn't. You almost died. Almost only counts in horseshoes. It most certainly does not. I agree with your mother. Now her dad was stepping in? Crap on a cracker. Going against her mom alone was bad enough. Now this? He wouldn't drop one argument in favor of a new one. He'd dismantle each of hers piece by piece and turn them on her before moving on to the next. She launched an offensive in a desperate attempt to keep ground. Dad, you'd do the same thing. Don't pretend you wouldn't. Admittedly, I would. He folded his hands over his knee. The difference is that I am 3 times your age, have experience in the military, and was not explicitly told not to go by someone who knows better than to let me. Nobody else was going to. Nobody else could. I'm not mad at you for trying to do the right thing. On the contrary, I'm proud of you. But I told you not to, Sana, and you did it anyway. I am mad about that. And here was the guilt. God damn it. It wasn't enough to beat the indignation, at least. I never should have told you about my plan. Too late. You're grounded. No glassmaking until school starts again. What? That was months away. No hanging out with your friends until next month either. But do you really want to push me? No, she didn't. He must have read it on her face because he said, I'm not taking your phone because I want to be able to contact you in an emergency. Small mercies. That said, you've lost TV and computer privileges. That was expected. Lord, but he was mad. Okay, I get it. The injustice burned, but she knew when she was facing a losing battle. Can I go to my room? He nodded, and she beat a hasty retreat. As she fled, she heard her mom start tearing into her dad and his patient replies. Her room wasn't large, but it was comfortable. Homemade sun catchers lined the bright green walls. Her school desk was tucked into a nook in the far corner, and her bed with its colorful quilts was in another. The tan carpet was soft enough to lie down on, if scratchy, and a bookshelf hosting several crystals and other knickknacks occupied the wall next to her desk. Normally, being in here would calm her down. Right now, the walls were closing in. She couldn't stay. The window was still open, and she had the bots reformed into a bag-scarf-sneakers combo and one leg thrown over the sill in short order. When she looked back at the door, she could hear her parents arguing on the other side. In a moment of weakness, she re-entered the room and scribbled a note on a blank page of last year's English notebook. Gone to cool off. Have my phone. Back soon. She hesitated. Love you. She tossed the notebook and pen on her bed in easy view of anyone who'd come in. She took the drop without hesitation after that.